Welcome back to another Kerbal Space Program video, returning to the greatness that is the OG after the crash and burn that was KSP2. It's been over a month of communication blackout following the announcement that Intercept Games has been shuttered, so at this point we can consider the project dead and buried. But I said in my last KSP video that I don't want to just revert back to doing stock standalone missions in KSP1 all over again, and instead we want to set our sights higher, implementing mods and multi-video expeditions into the unknown, in the process modding KSP1 to essentially resemble what KSP2 should have been if it were all, actually managed correctly. So consider this episode 1 of currently untitled KSP1 playthrough. Let's call our agency Lowne Aerospace 0. How cool is that? Where's my logo? There it is. Now for difficulty options, going to put it in science mode, and we're going to have ComNet enabled, which it should be by default. This all looks fine, great. And it's going to be in science mode, but since it might be a bit dull to just watch me unlock the tech tree all over again, I will just use cheats to max out our technology real quick once this black screen disappears. Come on. Here we are. Welcome to the Space Center, a very beautiful Space Center if I do say so myself, with BlackRack's volumetric clouds mod installed. So there's a lot of other beautification mods. We've got Eve, environmental vision enhancements, Scatterer, a few other things as well. I've done a video on how to make KSP look nice before, so you can look that up if you want. But here we are. We also have, in fact, I actually said I need to use cheats just to get some technology. So there we are, max technology enabled. The other mod I've got installed right now is something called Restock. Let's have a look. So basically Restock is by Netea, I believe, and it just basically reskins all of the stock parts to look nicer and more realistic compared to the kind of cartoonish style of vanilla KSP. But yes, no other parts mods installed for the moment, because I don't want to overwhelm viewers with just a billion mods installed all at once, and you don't know where to start, and it's all a massive nightmare. So each episode we're going to add a mod to the game, or, we might stagger it a bit, so we'll add one mod that then carries us for 2 or 3 videos. Then we add another one, etc., etc. So in this first episode, it's just going to be Restock and obviously the visual mods, and we will go from there. I haven't really got a plan for this series, right? So I thought, what would be a cool thing to try and do? And I'm like, colonies. Because colonies were such a big, exciting prospect for KSP2. Let's make a colony in Kerbal Space Program 1. I'm not going to do it in this episode, though, because it would be nice to use actual colony parts from colony part mod packs. So we're just going to establish a location for our colony. And I thought Minmus would be a good place to start. So I'm not quite sure where this series is going to take us, but to start off with, I think establishing a colony on the surface of Minmus would be a fun thing to do. And it's going to be like a proper colonization. So it's going to consist of a full surface base, which can support crew, science experiments. It's going to have landing pads. It's going to be really epic. And of course, Kerbal Space Program 1 has in situ resource utilization, also known as ISRU, which means you can mine ore and then convert it into things like fuel. That's the only thing you can turn it into in stock KSP. Maybe we can get some mods that let you do other stuff. I must admit, I'm very ignorant on what mods exist for these kind of different kinds of repellents and things you can make. I know Kethane possibly was what. It's been a while, to be honest, guys. So I'm going to have to research this. Comment below any suggestions for mods, of course. Yes, so it can mine stuff. Then we're going to have an orbiting space station, which, can serve as like a gateway, I suppose. So big interplanetary missions can go to Minmus, refuel at the gateway, and then head on their merry way to wherever they're going. And we need, obviously, some sort of craft that can ferry fuel from the surface base that's been synthesized there and transport it to the space station that has some sort of fuel depot. And of course we need a crew shuttle as well to ferry crew to and from the surface base, well, between the surface base and the orbiting space station. And maybe even some sort of dedicated vehicle, potentially an SSTO, to maximize our efficiency, that can transport Kerbals from Kerbin to the space station and back again safely. So there's lots to do, lots to think about. So in this video, because I kind of wanted to introduce things slowly. I just want to introduce kind of like stock KSP with restock, just to kind of get you guys used to what the new stock parts look like, as well as obviously the beautiful mods like volumetric clouds, scatterer, etc. And then for the next episode, we can then add either space station parts if we're going to build the space station next episode, or colony parts if we build the colony, or something else. I'm actually away on holiday or vacation next weekend, so I don't actually know if I'll have much time to make a big Kerbal Space Program video next week. I'm going mountain biking in Wales if you're interested, so there'll be a second channel video for that, I guess. So maybe next week will just be some random video. Maybe, who knows, we'll have had some news about KSP2. It's doubtful at this stage, but if we do, then I could do a KSP2 video instead. But yeah, we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves. So, have I missed anything? Is there anything else that needs to be part of our grand Minmus base? Let me know. Maybe a hotel and casino, yeah? A little throwback to 2018. Although I think I did a Minmus base hotel and casino video in 2022, didn't I? Gosh, time does fly, eh? Time has flown, really, for the building of this rocket, because it was I time-lapsed it. Time flies. Is that a segue? I don't know. We're on the launch pad, though, now, so this is awful. I'm so sorry. Let's just launch. And off we go. So, yes, I did mention that, you know, as far as beautification mods go, we've got the volumetric clouds, we've got scatterer, and I put that on-screen list at the beginning. But one of the mods we have is waterfall, which adds the really nice engine plume effects coming from the bottom of our rocket with those two kickback SRBs, and I think it's the mainsail engine on the rocket. I feel like I would know this, right? Because I've just built the rocket, but yeah, what can I say? What can I say? And I quite like how this rocket came out, actually. It looks a bit industrial, grungy. I obviously did not attach the Separatrons to the side SRBs correctly, because they just... Well, it was a very close call, really. Luckily, we do have a launch escape system on this rocket, so we could have pulled the crew away to safety if needs be, but luckily we didn't. One of the things I kind of like about this vehicle was the very intricate way in which I kind of constructed the nose of the crew cabin, actually, because I wanted to have the shielded docking port, because I think it looks really cool and I very rarely actually get to use it, but I also wanted the utility of the launch escape system, which meant I had to get sort of clever with offsetting octagonal struts and then shifting stuff using the offset tool. I thought it was pretty cool. If you saw it in the time lapse and agree, then I'm glad that you also thought it was cool. Remember, guys, like the video. That's what helps me out to survive the algorithm and all that. And yeah, there goes the lower stage now, and we can deploy that. Well, we're not deploying the launch escape system, but we're detaching it, setting it free, and getting rid of that protective fairing on the upper command module as we prepare to enter Kerbin orbit. Now, we are going to be circularizing using this lower stage, but worry not, when we detach it, it's not just going to detach via a decoupler. It's going to detach via a decoupler, right? But it's also going to fire 4 Separatrons. You can probably see that in the staging window, and maybe you saw it in the build time lapse. I always struggle to know if I'm making the build time lapses too fast or too slow. I try and strike a balance. It's probably never quite correct, but I like to think that it was a reasonable pace, but sometimes the little things like that can get missed. So there. So those Separatrons are going to fire, and they're going to provide sufficient thrust that it will just deorbit that spent stage, basically. So that's a very roundabout way of explaining that. So here we are. I just time warped to the daylight side of Kerbin. There goes that stage, by the way. Time warped to the daytime side of the planet, just so you can kind of see what's going on a bit more easily as we reconfigure this ship. I've just went to the map view to confirm that debris is now on a suborbital trajectory, and yes, it is. So now we can deploy the fairings, protecting our payload. Fairings are not like debris pieces in KSP, like when they're basically like solar panels when solar panels break, if that makes sense. Like they're not persistent debris, they just essentially despawn. So I'm going to deorbit them SpaceX style. And yeah, now we're just reconfiguring the ship. It's a bit like the Apollo missions, I guess, in a way, but instead of having a lunar lander, it's just a little kind of payload bus. Is that the right word? Like a structure that's carrying our 2 satellites. It's kind of inefficient, but it's just cool. I like it. I kind of like. Minmus is kind of an easy destination to visit, right? So it's sometimes fun to over-engineer your vehicle to get there, and this vehicle is very much over-engineered. It would have been far more efficient to just separate the satellites and the vehicle here now, because the satellite's got like 1,000 meters per second of delta V to do basically very, very low delta V maneuvers. But it's just nice to have that wiggle room, isn't it? But it just, I don't know, there's something cool about having one vehicle that just carries everything, and then it all separates out when we get to Minmus. I don't know. Sometimes it's more fun to do inefficient missions that are just very overbuilt and over-engineered, because it's fun. It's a video game, right? I'm allowed to have fun occasionally. Yeah, SSTOs, that's what I'm trying to be efficient. When I'm building rockets, sometimes it's fun to just pack a bit more than what you need to and make things a bit unnecessarily complicated for the sake of, making the video interesting, I guess. But also, it's just fun doing overly complex missions. Maybe I'm just weird like that. All these years of playing Kerbal Space Program has just turned me crazy. But I have no rebuttal for that, actually. That's a legitimate theory. It's my situation right now, I suppose. Anyway, we are here at Minmus, so let us move on to our Minmus capture burn. There it goes with that. That's the Poodle engine, by the way. Not to be confused with the Labradoodle, which is a KSP2 engine that looks very aesthetically similar to this, the Poodle engine. But the Poodle engine, this is the Poodle engine in restock. So it's the stock engine, but with a new texture. And, restock, I'm fairly certain is made by Neteo, right? So there's a fairly good chance he based the design of the Labradoodle in KSP2 on the design of the Poodle engine in KSP1 restock. KSP1 restock Poodle does have a few different variants to make it look more like the original Poodle, if that's what you prefer. I quite like the low-profile quadruple nozzle engine there. Anyway, we have our 2 satellites to deploy. One of them is a bit bigger because it's got our ore scanner. So let's perform an orbital survey, and we can't. You see, I couldn't quite remember exactly what altitude you need to be at to perform ore surveys. I remembered that you need to be in a polar orbit, hence why we've captured into a polar orbit, but we're far too high. So we're now just going to decrease our periapsis to begin with, and then we can lower our apoapsis at our new periapsis. Now, if you manage to read that little warning in time, our altitude needs to be below 300 kilometers, 300 kilometer high orbit. So I've gone for a nice round number of 250 kilometers. It doesn't really need to be completely circular, but, a bit of a stickler for the details. So we're going to go for exactly 250 kilometers, to the nearest 1,000, right? Or the nearest 1 if we're using the unit of kilometers. 250,000 meter orbit, rounded to the nearest 1,000. So that's what I'm going for in terms of orbital accuracy. Now that we've planned that little maneuver, we're going to switch to our other satellite, which we're going to place into an roughly equatorial orbit. Now, one of the kind of, I suppose almost like a missed opportunity really, is Minmus. You can actually put satellites in stationary orbit. Minmus' sphere of influence is big enough that you can put satellites within a stationary orbit, such that they're stationary relative to the surface of Minmus. And maybe a future project could be that we place a satellite in orbit directly above the colony, so that it's stationary relative to the colony. I think that would be very difficult. I haven't thought this through. I shouldn't make promises like this, but that's a potential thing we could do later on. But I say it's potentially a missed opportunity because we could have done that in this video, right? Establish a stationary relay network around Minmus, but I wanted to have an ore scanner in permanent polar orbit. And so if we've got a polar orbit satellite, just having another one in equatorial orbit, a high equatorial orbit at that, you got pretty good coverage of the surface. Like, you don't really need any more communication satellites after this. So this should provide sufficient communications for our surface base. Even when it's facing away from Kerbin, these 2 satellites working together should ensure that it maintains a constant connection to the Kerbal Space Center. And of course, the orbiting space station can have a relay on it as well. So that's kind of like an extra sort of level of security in terms of maintaining ComNet connection to Kerbin. As you can see, I've gone for another super nice round number for this. Somewhat arbitrary, 790,000 meter high orbit. But as long as it's a round number, I don't mind. Look at that. Oh, that's a very nice, that's a 5 meter difference, near enough, between the apoapsis and periapsis altitudes. I'm very happy with that. Next stage in the mission is to choose a landing site. So as you can see, I didn't really mention it because I'm guessing you guys could just sort of see when it happened on screen. We have a pink overlay on Minmus. That's our orbital survey data, showing us where the highest concentrations of ore deposits are. Before we do that, though, as you can see, we are now on a collision course, just so I could detach that little support scaffold for the satellites. We can then ditch it so that it crashes into the surface of Minmus, doesn't leave any debris in space. And then I did a little pro-grade burn with the command module just so that our Kerbals don't meet a similar fate. They can just circularize at periapsis and get into a nice low polar orbit, and we can choose a landing spot. The purpose of this phase of the mission is to plant a flag exactly where we want to place the colony, just to make it easier when we've got to faff around scouting out when we're like trying to transport lots of big logistics modules. We just want to know exactly where to go. So here I just sat in the map screen and time warped and just tried to find a spot that had a high concentration of ore. So I was trying to get this overlay to work and it wasn't really responding. You got to click the ore when in the little like resource menu there. I clicked it there. Now it shows up. So I set the cutoff at 90% because I wanted to have a very high concentration of ore. The other kind of prerequisite I wanted it to be in the Minmus Flats, which are the big flat areas, and unhelpfully, the areas that don't really have much ore there. The reason I wanted the flats is that it's just easier to build stuff on a flat platform. It also gives us the opportunity to have like a sort of runway for SSTOs to launch and land, well, not land, but they can lift off horizontally like a plane, just because it looks cool, right? And like I say, it's just easier to build stuff on a perfectly flat surface, which the Minmus Flats, as the name would suggest, are. Now, I did see that little spot there that I'm now swung away from. See it there? I thought that could be a potentially good spot because it's a flat area, but it's very small. Are there any larger places? And aha! I then saw I've moved the camera away now. I then saw those two spots there. They're directly below us. I thought these would be perfect. In terms of which one in the map screen there, I'm going for the lowest one, as in the southernmost one, just because it kind of looks the biggest by eye. And you can see there's that kind of long, thin one that sort of almost connects it to that larger flat area. So if I wanted to have like a big, long SSTO runway, that sort of is provided by that thinner bit there. I don't know. I was trying to. I didn't really put much thought into it, to be honest. I was like, that looks like a better spot. That's basically all the thought that went into it. And if we did have to move the colony, if we did drain this area of all of its resources, then, it should be fairly trivial to just move it all to another flat area, because there's those other two flat places that have high concentrations of ore that, are pretty easy to reach by wheeled vehicle. You haven't got to traverse any mountain ranges really together, just those little lumps, little humps in the land. Don't really know how coherent this commentary is coming across. I'm just trying to get back into the swing of things, really. I did say earlier in the video that one of the things I wanted to do for this video was trying to keep things fairly simple, just to kind of introduce you guys to the concept of this series, just in case it's a complete misfire and I should be having a completely different approach to going back to Kerbal Space Program 1 and, get you guys used to seeing what the stock parts now look like before I start introducing mods and confusing things. But also, I myself still trying to get used to playing KSP 1 again. Like, I'm still got a bit of, like, in the vehicle assembly building, just building stuff. I'm still doing all the shortcuts and mouse clicks and movements that you do in KSP 2 versus KSP 1. And I always having just an opportunity to get used to the UI a bit more before I started doing more ambitious stuff. Not that a Minmus surface base is necessarily a really difficult thing to do, but it's an impressive thing to do, and I wanted to make sure I did it right. One idea for a video, actually, and I wrote this as a pinned comment on my most recent Space This Week, so if you've not seen that, then go ahead and watch that video. But I put a pinned comment saying, one idea for a video would be I could purchase like an eye tracker. So hopefully the name is descriptive enough, but it's basically a thing that tracks my eye movement, so you guys can see what I'm looking at when playing Kerbal Space Program. Because one of the things I try and sort of get across in my beginner tutorial videos, is that it's very tempting to play the game like a normal video game, right, where you just use the arrow keys, or WASD, and just watch your rocket and fly your rocket like you're playing GTA or something, or Flight Simulator, when in reality, you basically just look at the nav ball the entire time and don't look at anything else. That was kind of more of a thing for KSP2, to be fair, because the nav ball was way better in that game because it had everything at the nav ball. KSP1's a bit inferior in that regard because you've got your nav ball at the bottom of the screen, and then your altitude information is all at the top of the screen. You've got to like flick up and down. And you got a Kerbal Engineer, which is at the top as well. I know I could move that down to the bottom, but I'm just so used to it being at the top at this point. If it's at the top, it's more likely to be against a black background. Like right now, the bottom of the screen has got the bright Minmus surface, whereas the top has obviously got the black background of space. Bad timing. It briefly didn't just then. So I feel like it's just a better spot for Kerbal Engineer. So like it might be interesting, and I'd quite like might find it quite interesting as well to see what my eyes are looking at when I'm actually playing a mission. Like, am I just staring at the nav ball, or am I just watching the ship? Maybe I've just got so experienced at this game at this point that I don't need to be as reliant on the nav ball because I'm just more aware intuitively how the rocket's going to behave. I don't know. If I was going to do this, I'd probably do something difficult. Probably an Eve mission, right? Like, I guess Joule 5 you could consider to be a harder mission than Eve, but only harder in the sense that it just takes longer. Like, Tylo is the only real challenging part of Joule 5, and I guess designing the ship itself, which I don't think an eye tracker would really be that enlightening for building a ship, because you're just looking at the parts you're placing as you go along. Where an Eve mission, obviously, it's very stressful launching from the surface of Eve. So what am I looking at when I'm launching? Am I looking at, you know, the throttle gauge and then the altitude and then I'm barely looking at the rocket? I think it'd be kind of an interesting video. But I don't know. I might be completely wrong. You guys are the audience. I can only speculate what the audience want. So make your voices known. Is that a video you want to see? It's obviously kind of expensive piece of equipment, so I don't really want to do it if no one's going to watch the video. So yeah. But then, you know, I could make more eye tracking videos for KSP 2, but also my big epic controller that I made a video on a couple of videos ago. A couple of weeks ago would be a better, less weird way of wording that, wouldn't it? So you can see if I'm looking at the screen and the controller and the screen, potential interesting stuff to come from an eye tracking video. So yeah. Make your opinions known in the comments below. But other than that, I do hope you enjoyed this mission. As you can see, we have landed in this very tall grass. And so Jebediah, he's going to stretch his legs. It's been, what, about a month they've been in that capsule. So you can just remove his helmet and soak in the view with those beautiful volumetric clouds. You can get them from Black Rack's Patreon. Go support him now. He's obviously just been laid off from Intercept Games, so he needs your support now more than ever. And look at this beautiful thing you get from it. It is well worth the $5 if you ask me. And thank you so much as well to the names on the left. They're of course my Patreon supporters and my YouTube channel members. If you want to support what I do here, then you can follow the links below, or that little white and black blob logo on screen. I still hate the new Patreon logo. What were they thinking? And yeah, with that, that's the end of the video. Bye everyone.